Excellent. Yeah. So we're here to talk about the future of Drupal. Take it away, CJ. Get us started.
Yeah, so everyone, today we're going to walk you through some Drupal features that is available now. So kind of cover a little bit of what Martin was talking about, and then what's coming up next in Drupal 11 and other releases. And then we'll touch on later releases and some forward-looking topics. But right away, we're going to start talking about where we are now. Just to quickly recap some of my favorite features to highlight out of Drupal 10. We got that CK Editor 5, which is basically that improved editing experience. It's that polished experience that I really enjoy now. It makes copy editing and collaboration a lot smoother. So that's a great addition. The media is now out of the box, so more people are now going to get to experience an easier way to work with assets. Layout Builder, probably that's like top for me. Is just a great feature that's now out of the box for everyone to use in Drupal 10. Provides that flexible landing pages that Kim and Mike were mentioning, to help you mix and match components and media and copy to really help support your storytelling on a page, and essentially be able to customize it to help funnel users to whatever call to action you have, or that key goal, that conversion you're looking for. And of course, we have the themes that were mentioned, Olivero and Claro. It gives you that more modernized look. And of course, accessibility improvements, which is really key to anybody's equity, diversity, and inclusion strategy and approach. So each of these features really contribute to something I always look for in an experience, which is I'm looking for an experience that is valuable. So whether it's more efficient, something that's usable and delightful. So that's where we are now. And just like Jason was talking about, building up websites, we're building up Drupal, and it's continuously improving. So we're talking about, so what's next? So Tim, I'm looking at you now. Tell us at a high level, what's the up and coming features for Drupal?
Great. Yeah. And so I want to shout out Martin for giving a great overview of some of what's been going on in the lead up to Drupal 10 and coming up in point releases of Drupal 10. There's a lot that's going on. I think Martin said something really important, which is that, Drupal 9 was built in Drupal 8, Drupal 10 was built in Drupal 9, Drupal 11 is being built in Drupal 10, and so on and so forth, which is to say that as Drupal is innovating further and adding features that are in the vision given by Dries, the project founder, or by the community at large, by what excites and inspires them, those features are going to be released in point releases of Drupal 10, and then sort of the cumulative sum of all of those things together will be kind of part of what happens in the release of Drupal 11, and we'll start that process over again going to 12. But the takeaway there is that certainly once you're on these modern versions of Drupal, if you're keeping up with this 6-month release cycle, you will be riding the train that takes you to these new features. It's no longer a sort of big bang enterprise to pick a single major version of Drupal, do a big migration, and then be empowered with these tools. It's things that you'll sort of continuously be empowered with as you follow along with the minor version updates of Drupal. We'll talk about 3 things here: the project browser initiative, automatic updates from a slightly different perspective than what Martin has talked about, and the recipes and starter templates initiative and how that relates to the idea of distributions that you may be familiar with.
So Tim, let's get right into it. Project browser, what is this feature, and what problems are we trying to solve with this?
Yeah, so this is, I think, as many of you will know, if you're on one of the modern versions of Drupal, Drupal in the transition from 7 to 8 became a little bit more technically complex, certainly much more powerful, but in some ways a little bit more difficult to unlock that power. So, you started having to use Composer from the command line as an essential part of the workflow to build your Drupal sites. And that made it difficult. The site builder audience had to become more technical. You certainly needed a higher degree of involvement from your developer audience and technical audience. So the project browser initiative is, not necessarily for everyone. And in a lot of spaces, you'll have a robust IT team that's still managing your production deployments and things. But what the project browser does is take the whole module and extension ecosystem from Drupal.org and display it directly in the Drupal admin UI. So this feature is a work in progress, but there's been a large number of community contributors, companies and organizations working to put this together. And so what it focuses on is a new recategorization of all the Drupal extensions to make them a little bit more easy to find for different use cases. And then also new quality signals on individual projects. So you'll see in this little example I pulled out, there's sort of a shield with a check mark that indicates modules that do have security advisory coverage. There's an indicator of whether or not it's installed, and there's some description of these things, and you filter them out by categories. And the powerful thing about this is if you're in an environment where this is enabled, you can click a button and install, and it abstracts away all the composer difficulty. Now, I will say that if you are, like I said, in a larger team and in a larger IT situation, probably your development team is not going to have you installing modules willy-nilly on production. But what this does still give you the capability to do is look for that next most powerful integration. Perhaps there's marketing automation software that you're interested in. You'll be able to jump in here to see if a Drupal integration is already ready. And maybe if you have a staging environment or something like that, a development environment, play around with it and then talk to your IT team, say, hey, is this something we can deploy into our production environment? So it's a new way to create more accessible sort of access to some of the more powerful extensions in Drupal, is I think the way that I would put it.
Yeah, and I think when I look at this, it really helps us discover, or helps teams, like not just marketing communications or not just IT, but teams to be able to discover modules, because no one knows everything, right?
Yeah.
We have to come together and bring ideas forth and forward and work on them together. So I really appreciate this now, because it's becoming more transparent for everyone, especially for the non-technical users. It gives us good indicators, lifting some of those information up earlier on, like installs. I don't have to look at ones that have only been installed once, because I know IT doesn't want to look at those. So it gives me a quicker way to get access to information, and the refining of the search results by those categories are going to be a huge plus for us, because whatever problem you're seeking out there, like whether it's I have a resource library, a health resource library that I need to put together, maybe I'll look under education, see what's there, what's available that could kind of support that use case, that feature.
Yep. And I think these three features that we're talking about here really support each other in how they work together, the sort of underlying technology, which I think is really powerful. So I'll swing back around to some of the ideas here as I talk to the next options as well.
Yeah, so let's get to the next feature, automatic update. This sounds very descriptive, sounds promising. Is it what it is? Is it what it sounds like?
Yeah, so this has been long requested in Drupal. I think some other folks have referred to this as well in their presentations a little bit, but the notion again that Drupal has gotten, let's be honest, a little bit more difficult to maintain, perhaps because of the need to understand, again, sort of the composer process for doing your site updates, for ensuring that you're up to date with security releases, all of these sorts of things. For those of you, I know I'm speaking mostly to the marketing teams, but your IT contacts as well are frequently sitting in the Drupal communication channels, sort of refreshing on Wednesdays, seeing if a new security release has come out. And so the automatic updates feature is something that's really important. What it's doing is, again, abstracting away from all that command line composer work sort of in the background, ensuring that the site can update to compatible versions of all of its different components, looking if that update is available and applying that update either sort of at the click of a button or even on a schedule. And this is, again, like all of the features that I'm talking about, still in progress with sort of a certain scope. It's focused on core patch and security releases right now, but the goal is certainly to expand that even to the minor releases, the thing that would take you from 10.1 to 10.2, to include contrib. And who knows, one day it might even be able to aid you in the process of updating from a version like 11 to 12, although that's sort of a pie in the sky idea right now. So it's really powerful, and there's a lot of things we can do, and there's been a lot of attention paid to sort of the security model. So there is a project, a specification really, developed by the Cloud Native Computing Foundation called the Update Framework. And this project is used by organizations trying to secure the software for self-driving cars, for other major software projects in the open source ecosystem, Python, like a variety of different folks. And it's something that we're implementing as well. And we're trying to secure the whole PHP ecosystem with this sort of update signing technology as we build the update feature for Drupal. It's been a great collaboration with some other projects. So it's really cool, but you might think this is kind of a background feature, but there's some reasons to be more excited about it. So CJ, I think you had some thoughts about this one.
Yeah, like I think if you're in a marketing team or digital team and you're the product owner or you lead a lot of the work on the website and the strategy, I think you're going to be looking forward to this one to come sooner rather than later. Because if your IT team, your IT maintenance development team is always tackling these updates and spending hundreds of hours cumulatively, now they can start tackling that product backlog of all those enhancements, should haves and nice to haves that you've been wanting, but they never get time to do. So I think shifting resources is going to be a huge plus out of this in the long term. And I'm looking forward to this one. But next, we got to move on. So next up, the next and last up and coming item that we're going to talk about are recipes. And my understanding is this is like Drupal distributions, but with more flexibility. Now, for the context for everyone, Drupal distributions are essentially a pre-packaged set of features and themes and modules, along with Drupal core, where organizations can basically spin up a site out of the box, and the site's already on brand. It has all the colors that you have. It's compliant and it's already been tested for multiple hours. So you get a head start on things. So for example, we worked with the YMCA. So instead of each YMCA branch starting from scratch, customizing their site, and what would essentially be replicating features from other branches, you get this starter package basically, and away you go. And then you're starting to just customize and starting to focus on more edge cases that will contribute to your end user goal or end site goals. And you're lowering your costs and you're quicker to the market. So that said, there are still limitations to this approach. And Tim, can you explain recipes and how this is basically Drupal distributions 2.0?
Yeah, exactly. So setting context again, and still speaking at a high level, as I said, sort of the goal for the development cycle during Drupal 10 and into 11 and beyond is to take a lot of the capabilities that Drupal already has and make them easier to access, make the advantages of those capabilities easier to implement for client sites and end users. So when we talked a moment ago about Project Browser, it's easier to find the libraries of extensions that people use. Automatic updates, easier to maintain security updates and stay up to date with these sorts of things. And with recipes, it's about making it easier to mix and match pieces of functionality to kind of jumpstart your site installation. So as many of you know, out of the box, Drupal core is more of a platform than a final product, right? You're building on top of it to create the functionality that you need for your particular use case, for your particular environment. And that can sometimes, that's frequently pretty intimidating, and also can make it a little bit tricky when you're trying to do larger scale deployments. You're deploying across multiple brands or campuses and things like that. That can be tricky. That's why we initially, years ago in Drupal, introduced the idea of recipes, so that we could do things like this example of the sort of OpenY distribution. There's LMS systems, there's the Farm OS system, which is literally for farm management and is one of my favorite things that exists in the Drupal space. But there's all these systems, the downside being they're not meant to be mixed and matched. You sort of get locked into updating the same distribution. You can't necessarily substitute out individual modules because things are so tied together. So it gets a little bit tricky. So the idea behind recipes is to take the notion of distributions and the notion of larger feature sets and make them almost as easy to use as regular modules, as regular extensions to Drupal. So there's still packages of multiple pieces of functionality, So they might include a couple of different modules. They might include some template components, some configuration, whatever it may be, but they can be installed and uninstalled and mixed and matched with each other. Or at least that's the vision as we keep working on building these. So you could say, hey, I do want an LMS system, but I want to add commerce to that system. So I'm building a learning portal for, the healthcare franchise offices in my network. I want to add some commerce component for products that we provide to these healthcare providers, rather than sort of hacking a distribution and then trying to figure out how the heck you're going to keep up with updates. You'll be able to install both of those recipes, the sort of LMS recipe and a commerce recipe together to build that. You'll also be able to write your own recipes. So if you have, again, sort of multi-site, multi-campus installations, you can build sort of a baseline recipe for the core functionality and then additional recipes for, hey, this is for pharmaceutical brand marketing portals where we have to add other tools that let us manage compliance, maybe modules for GDPR, modules for HIPAA. And then this one is for, like some kind of consumer marketing thing with different needs. And again, you can use those pieces together without being locked into a single monolithic distribution. And even more than that, what I think is exciting is we're hoping to put these recipes in the same project browser, so that the recipes are also something that you can actually just go look and say, hey, I want to install this learning management system or this commerce system, and it will collect all of the different modules that are part of that, the starter configuration templates, and get that all together for you. So something else that, again, is reducing cost of ownership, time to market on these things, and just trying to make this process easier.
Yeah, I really like the flexibility of this feature, like being able to hone in on certain site features, whether it's, a donation piece or events for a conference that you're holding, or even the data visualization, being able to enhance and focus on specific features without having to worry about the distribution, is going to be almost like more efficient for the whole team to be able to focus on. So we now have these insights on all these three features. Can you explain to us when we'll get to use them?
Yeah, so as Martin said before, and as I said at the top of this message, you do not actually have to wait for Drupal 11 for these features, hopefully. These are being built in Drupal 10 in the 6-month point releases. So it may be perhaps in 10.2, automatic updates is ready. Perhaps in 10.3, the project browser is ready. And you'll be able to get those features just by staying up to date on your Drupal 10 site. So Drupal 11 is more of taking the new things that have been built in Drupal and then removing some of the older deprecated code that has sort of built up over time, and also updating some of the fundamental internal libraries. So, Martin referred to PHP versions of Symfony, components that build Drupal core itself. So to be more specific, right now that 6-month release cycle is typically happening in like June and December, as when these new feature releases tend to happen these days. And so you should expect to see announcements about that on Drupal.org on the website. And then that actual point where we say, hey, we're ready to upgrade some of those internal components, we're ready to remove some deprecated code, and release Drupal 11 itself, that will most likely be August 2024 or December 2024, depending on whether any deadlines kind of slip there. And something I should say as well is the upgrade process has been vastly improved compared to what your experience might have been doing a migration from 7 to 8, or even perhaps this kind of 8 to 9 kind of transition. There's some great tools in the community, an update status module, deprecated code checking tools that help you with your custom code, all of these things that make it much easier to go from 9 to 10, 10 to 11, and even generate automatic fixes for some of these things. There's a lot of tools at your disposal. So if you're thinking about doing one of these upgrades, getting caught up to the latest version to get ready for these features, certainly check out things like Drupal Rector or upgrade status on Drupal.org, or send me some questions afterwards, and I can direct you to the right places. So it's going to be really exciting. It's going to sort of continuously bring us these things that we've talked about and additional features that weren't in this list. And the process will continue from there.
Yeah, and so just to touch on it, I know we're at time. Some of the things that we were looking forward to, and Tim, you could talk about AI quickly, but there's, the physical space item, I'm thinking there's opportunities for digital signage to be part of Drupal, a donation wall, a digital donation wall, highlighting those who donate to your various institutes and hospitals. But Tim, just quickly touch on AI and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, we'll wrap up really quickly. When we talk about 11 and beyond and the features that go beyond where we are, I think the main thing that I want to say is, yes, we are looking at the technology that's emerging, things like AI, things like this increasing blurring of the digital and the physical spaces by making digital materials present beyond just the web, on campuses, in digital signage, in other tools and devices that people use, voice assistants, all of that. We've built this 6-month release cycle in order to be able to adapt and pivot to these technologies as they exist. But the thing that I really want to say is that you can participate in this. Drupal is an open source project, and one of its strongest assets is the community of people who have a stake in its future. And so as users of Drupal in a key industry vertical in the healthcare space, your input and your feedback is actually really, really valuable. So I would encourage you, as we wrap up here, check out Drupal.org, check out, talk to your IT teams about whether you have needs for the future of Drupal or whether your teams have contributed back to Drupal before. And think about, joining us at DrupalCon or having other conversations where you can make your voices heard in what you'd like to see in the future of this product roadmap. And we'd be more than happy to listen and try and rally the community around making that happen. So thank you again to CJ. Thank you to the organizers. And thanks for the little bit of extra time so we can finish up the ideas here.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.